Okay.
I think it uses the integrated encoders as well.
Well, okay, I think it might use integrated encoders, but definitely not the relative ones.
How do you use both at the same time?
So what you do is at the very beginning of the code, you record the value that the absolute encoder has, and that should never be wrong, like ever, because it's like a straight shaft that has the magnet on it that never moves. So you know the starting position, and then if you never zero the like relative encoders after that point, you'll always know exactly where the module is rotated to. And then they should be on like completely separate like control loops, right? Because the absolute encoders go straight to the Rio. So those would be read through an analog encoder class, and then the relative encoders would be read straight off of the Spark Max. Those should be like just Spark Max dot relative encoder or something like that, or integrated encoder, one of those two.
So if I pulled up the, let me just share my screen here. So if I pull up this guy here, in constants, can you guys all see that? Yeah or nay?
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Yeah, so in constants, we did a few modifications of these IDs, and feel free to narrate this, Adrian, because you know probably better than I do.
Right. In constants, really all we modified was, well, of course we modified all the CAN IDs of all the motors, and we initially tried to mess around with, well, of course after we changed into the thrifty encoders, we were messing around with the offset values. As you can see, the ones that we thought were correct are currently commented out in the after the left front offset, right front offset, all those constants. So it does not. So they're all set to 0 currently, and it does not take any of those readings or values into account at all. But other than that, that's all we modified in constants. Oh, and also, of course, changing the pigeon to a NavX, and that's the only other thing we modified, really.
Yeah, so it's commented out pigeon here.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, did you guys do the wheelbase? This looks like a square wheelbase.
Yes, we did not modify that, so that still does need to be modified because we did not take into account the fact that our robot is, of course, not a square wheelbase. It does not have a square wheelbase. So no, we did not change that, did not touch that.
So that's clearly like that we need to dive down to exactly the space between, I don't know which one is which. Width would be our 22-inch dimension, and the wheelbase would probably be the 1 dimension, I guess.
Wheelbase is the distance between the longer distance between the axles of the two wheels, and track width is the distance between, like, the width between the center of the two wheels.
Yeah, that sounds right. So that seems to be like someone should comment at least and check in what they maybe leave the old values since these have been tested on the robot and comment them out, and then put in our new estimated values that need to be tested, and maybe a comment that says something like these will need to be tested, and here's the old ones just in case, because we've obviously tested with the old ones, but it could account for some of the issues we were having, to be honest. So, okay. Now, there's a lot of other stuff they have in constants, because they do have a shooter. They have their arm, I think, is called the big stick. So let's just kind of look at the overview of their code. They have everything broken down into subsystems. And so obviously we're not going to need all of these subsystems, but we could use similar terminology and start modifying, or we could create our own. But since they've kind of organized it this way, we might, keep the intake as like the ground intake, and intake rollers could be the same for the ground intake, and then we might kind of just copy and paste that as the everybot arm or something. So someone who wants to, I guess Cheryl, since you've already done the different mechanisms, why don't you figure out how you want to organize this, and if you want to create some new files or new naming, go for it. But let's keep a lot of it commented out until you're ready to test, and we'll comment in, test it, and then we'll commit it once it's been tested.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have to be careful about adding code that could break the swerve. And so we want to add something, we want to test it before we commit it, or else it could break swerve and people are looking at the swerve code, but it was just like the intake code that was added that was using the same ID as the swerve modules, and then boom, we broke something. So we just have to be real careful here, since we do have somewhat working swerve. It's not perfect. I think people saw from the videos, and so I think we need to tune up, but it's a lot better than it ever has been. It's just it gets off essentially over a little bit of driving. It gets the angles are offset, and then so it starts to veer in weird ways that we're not quite sure. The deadband is a little wonky, so if no one's touching the joystick, the robot kind of starts drifting a little bit, but that can be tuned out pretty easily. Any other issues you guys noticed when you were testing? You talk about?
I kind of want to add to a little bit of what you said. So as you were mentioning, as you drive the swerve around a little bit, it gets off. I would like to say that there is PID actually applied to some of the angle motors, but I don't think that PID is perfect, and we might have to take a look at that. And that's why some of the, of course, as you're driving it around and the wheels get off, and even like as much as 2 degrees can cause it to start veering weirdly. So that's also something we may need to look at. I didn't look into it because I did not at the time. And I don't know if Sawmill's here to confirm that, because he was the one that had joystick. He was the one driving the swerve around. But that can be something we could look into.
Yeah, it's going to be very important that Sawmill puts his commits on top of this, so we start with that code base. I think we can get there without him, but I'd rather him just put his stuff on there so we don't have any issues. It should be pretty minor, I think, from what we have here, but it will be important for us to see the slight differences in case something major has been changed. But I think all our PID that you were talking about, Adrian, is right here, returning front and side.
Actually, it's just a KP. That's the only thing they use for proportional. It's 0.5 on the angle motor, or whatever the turning motors. It's I saw it in the code, I think, and I do think that it was very minor. The changes that were made in the driving portion of the testing. I think the main thing was to fix the auto alignment.
Okay.
Wait, so you guys were also having issues with like the swerve drifting as it would drive?
No, it was when if you put the robot on the field and turned it on, and the wheels were not aligned, it wouldn't auto align for you. So
But if you started like driving forwards, like would they kind of lock into their position? Or
yeah. So the problem was if you didn't go and kind of stick a one by one on each side and make sure they're straight, if they were, at angles, it just wouldn't move straight. And they basically said that they had to disable the auto alignment to get it to not align.
Okay.
It makes sense because they didn't set the absolute encoder offsets yet. So
Maybe that was it. Yeah. So maybe they maybe set those when we were gone, but it seemed like a minor tune-up thing. I mean, also the changes are pretty isolated. So
these offsets that were commented out, did you guys do those? These are the original ones from the paradox code, and then they were commented out.
No, the original paradox code actually had offset values in there. The values that are commented out are the supposed offset values for our robot, because we actually tried to use shuffleboard to print out, we use shuffleboard to print out values in order to calculate the offset values for the motors in our robot, and the values that are commented out are those values. But currently the code, it doesn't use those values at all. It treats the whatever angle or whatever position that the wheel is in when you press enable, it treats that as 0. And that's why Les was saying you have to align the wheels before enabling on the field in order to get it to work. That's the reason for that. But currently the code doesn't take into account the offsets or even the relative encoder for that. That's the reason for all of that.
Can we just go to hardware client and set the analog sensors to 0? Like, just 0 it in the hardware client so we don't have to do offsets.
What do you mean by just 0 it in hardware client?
yeah.
You want to share your screen, Cheryl, and show us?
Wait. Huh?
You're talking about in the tuner.
Yeah. Like, I think there's a place where you can recalibrate the analog sensor. So if we calibrate the sensor to 0 when the wheel is in the right position, we don't have to do an offset in the code.
Okay, I don't think they did that, so that's maybe the answer.
I'm kind of confused, like why you would do that. Just a little bit.
We don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you guys need to spend some time reading through this, make sure you understand what's happening. It doesn't take too much stuff, but I'm a little concerned about just random numbers in here that we don't know what they are for. So we probably should dig into this a bit more. I think those are just IDs, but they probably should be in the constants file instead of just here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little nervous just taking everything wholesale too. It's like almost like it wouldn't be bad if we just started pulling in the modules we need and then just focus on those. I don't know. Yeah.
I think we can comment out the subsystems and possibly even remove them. And if we want to add something very similar later on, that's fine. But yeah, I'm okay with if we're going up to, I guess, the robot, and we're pulling in all these different subsystems, we can start removing some stuff just so we don't have too much stuff going on in the code that we're not.
I mean, it needs to compile and stuff, but basically,
I'm gonna leave this to Cheryl to slowly go through and build it as you're removing stuff to make sure you're not.
Yeah. Or you could, do it the other way is just make another. This is where we've got, and then have another, implementation with, that you add to versus take the swerve and what we need right now, and then add the other stuff to it later. I don't know. I guess you can. it's up to whoever's going to be coding it, how comfortable they feel with it.
Yeah, I'll leave it to you, Cheryl. If you want to strip it way down and try that, that's fine. But I think the biggest thing is we need to be able to make sure that when it tested, it at least has the swerve functionality. And I'm pretty sure it will, the way this is structured. Anyway,
The other good news is they've used Limelight, so if we want to do the photon vision, it's just a different name, and should work. Should open the camera modules.
Read this and understand it. And if you don't understand something, this is a great time to ask questions if we're confused by something, so we can all kind of get on the same page on what the problem is. Cheryl will work on the subsystems. Other people should just look through the swerve and make sure you understand it. Sid, you had a question?
So an observation, really, but I was looking through the YAGSL Swerve library and the way they implemented thrifty encoders on their Swerve drive, because they have they now created like a class to do that, and the way that they read the encoder value is, instead of setting an analog encoder type, they set the input as an analog input, and then they read the voltage directly, which should help with some of the accuracy issues we were having. I'll send the file in the chat. And then compared that,
Do you want to share a screen, Sid?
yeah, here. Sorry, my clock is going off, but okay. So let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, so this is YAGSL, and what they do is they set encoder as an analog input in line 16, and then they have all of their other stuff which they read off of the JSON file, I think, and then you go, and it's based on team 5010 over here, and then the get absolute position is just inverted, yes or no, and then it multiplies by 1 or -1, and then you multiply that by the average voltage, which I think is like a function that reduces noise off of the analog input, and then divide that by what voltage is being supplied. So since it's not a perfect 5 volts, it would be like 3.3 out of like 4.9 volts, and that creates another more accurate reading, and then multiplies by 360. I don't know how much of the math is already done by like the analog encoder class, but I think this might be something we should look into. And then if we go over here, we declare it as an absolute error, an analog encoder, and then that, and here when we read it, you have a different kind of, it's a similar like logic, but there's just more stuff. And so I was thinking that it'd be better if we just like took the code straight off of YAGSL, because I believe that works. Just at least for the absolute encoders.
Actually, Alan Gregory also said that they would like rotate their wheels around and see what the maximum voltage they saw was, and they used that because he was saying that the voltage is not 5 volts, so you'd never quite make it to 360. So
yeah,
it does need to be done. Something needs to be done.
We're looking at readings, and we saw some values from our stuff that was a little over 1. So
Right.
1.0 is the maximum. We were reading some stuff that was like 1.02.
Yeah, so he also capped it. Yeah.
He was like, "Oh no, that's."
Yeah.
So I agree with you that averaging and dividing by whatever your maximum, so you never are above 1.0, is a pretty important part of it.
He clipped it. Yeah.
I remember it was like a really big issue over winter break when we were working on the mini swerve, like just getting the value to be correct, because it was a whole mess.
So, Les, you didn't hear the whole plan, but I have to go on a plane tomorrow afternoon. So I think we're going to have some type of event at my house. And then if we don't have a location, I don't mind continuing to have an event while I'm gone.
Okay. Okay.
My house has plenty of space and my garage can be emptied.
Okay.
Do testing there. And then, it's really just going to be programmers spending some time testing things out. And if we feel like it's starting to really look solid, I mean, we really want to get it on carpet and go to either Spectrum or Paradox. I know Spectrum's going to be meeting a lot this week, so we just need to line up with their times and see if we can go over there. Belair has already said that they're going to go over there, and I think we can go too.
Yeah. I'm available Thursday and Friday.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we get to the weekend, that's probably our best shot. I don't know what Paradox is at our event, so they're not going to be competing this weekend. So we just need to ask permission if we can go over there. I'm pretty sure Spectrum might be going over there too, from what I'm reading. So I need to do a little bit of legwork and ask permission from the mentors if we can. But we'll work out a schedule and probably plan for Saturday to do some.
Okay. I'm available Saturday too. So.
Any other concerns about schedule or issues? What about mechanisms? Do we need to do something mechanisms wise? It seems like we have a cone cube intake, but it needs to be tested a little bit more.
Yeah, the ground intake is not great from what we saw. The hard stop, that probably have to get that more solid first off, and then the actual intaking part needs to be tested a bit more and fixed up.
Do we have limit?
I don't think we've tested a lot, so we're gonna have Cheryl. I don't know what are your thoughts?
I was saying, do we have limit switch yet?
That is a good point. I think we can start the process of making mounts for limit switches and identify at least the limit switch when the ground intake is raised up to make sure that it doesn't go too far in. And then same with the every bot, it's really important that we don't take the every bot arm too far out. So those two limit switches, I think, would be pretty helpful.
Would we use I did a project my freshman year, and I used some Hall effect sensors from EPO that were pretty reliable. And they were just a little magnet, and then one end had the little switch on it. But I don't know if that would stand up to being smashed around the field by the robots.
I mean, technically, our thrifty encoders are essentially those same things. So if we put a permanent magnet on the moving part of the every bot arm, and we set the thrifty bot encoder in the right place, we might be able to just measure as it reaches a certain extension. If you look kind of in the CAD and plan out where that might be the best place to do it.
Okay.
And I guess we could do the same thing on the ground intake. We could use Hall effect in both places if we really wanted to be clever. It's up to you guys. Okay. Well, Sid, why don't you look at the CAD and figure out what we can do quickly on making some sensor mounting, and then we'll make sure we have a plan and start thinking about pieces we need to make to get that done. Is there any other mechanical things that are? I think the hard stop we need to work out a plan too. We might 3D print it. Greg is working on the hard stop for the ground intake.
Yeah, whatever we have right now, just get rid of that, because right now it's a number 10 screw with a churro that's like floating on there that's zip tied on. So just get rid of that. Yes. Yeah. Probably the best bet, I think, would 3D print something. Probably the best bet from the onto the Swerve modules.
Yeah, Greg can explain it to you, Sid, but the Swerve modules sit nicely in a place where you could make the Swerve module covers have a little elevated profile that we could put some type of, foam or a slice of a pool noodle. So when the ground intake comes down, it just kind of sits slightly off the ground, so it's not jamming itself into the ground. Make sense?
Yeah, I think Sid. Sid's like,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Hi.
Yeah. Sid, you think about some of those issues, and Greg will kind of help you to get it right because he's looked at the problem carefully. And if you guys identify some other stuff, let's talk about it.
Awesome.
Everybody else, everybody should look at the code, make sure you have a good understanding on it, and we'll be prepared to test tomorrow. I'll post a time and you guys can start testing, and then we'll work out a schedule for the rest of the week of what we actually want to do. Are there any days that are just not available so we can plan that out right now for people? No? Okay. That works. Any other questions, concerns, or we'll wrap it and I'll post some schedules pretty soon.
I saw you made the form for the beltway alliance for the Discord thing.
Did I make it?
I think so, right?
Oh, I made a form, yeah, but yeah. I'm gonna create a little Discord area for us to communicate with Belair and maybe the Spectrum kids and maybe some other teams, because I feel like we're very disjointed from Belair right now, and I want to foster more communication between our two groups. So we want to just have our own little shared Discord. It's not really a disco. It's not really Impact. It's kind of just almost like an open alliance feel, so we can be a bit more collaborative with Belair students by the time we get to the next one.
I've made the Discord already. I'm gonna add you to it, and then
Yeah, it's just the style. I really like the open alliance where each group has its own area that they can post to, and they can post updates. But then there's kind of just a shared discussion that we won't talk about things. So maybe we should match the open alliance style a little bit, keep it organized, so you kind of know which team everyone's from, and have a spot for each team to post their updates.
Yeah. Okay.
This is really a student thing. I really want the students to create it and students to mostly use it. Mentors can't keep up with all this stuff. I don't expect them to. So I feel like Belair students are not talking to us very much, and so I don't know what we need to do to help that process. But we'll try. Okay. Well, thanks for coming in tonight, guys. Any other questions or concerns before we wrap? Just a reminder, next week we start Thursday night at the competition, and then it'll be an all-day Friday thing, and it'll end on Saturday. I think next Saturday we should plan to stay a little bit later because it was kind of embarrassing that no one was there.
Oh. Oh, jeez.
But yeah, apparently Seymour has medals for us, so the EI.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Wait, isn't that a states qualifying award? Because I know that if you win it at states, you would go to worlds as a team.
No, it's not quite there. We get to it's like the Dean's List thing where you can win at states, you get to worlds, but you don't get automatically into states, I think.
Okay.
The honor is that we are going to have a group of people go to state and present the EI, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know when we're gonna get to do that again, so we'll take advantage of it and at least have it, our 10-minute presentation on judges or whatever time it gives. I'm really happy about that award.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
We really measure up to some of these other teams' work, but I think if you look at the big picture of what we've done, what our group has done over many, many years, I think then you could compare it. But just this one year, I'm sure there's some teams that are putting a lot more effort than us. But we'll need to just build off of it and make it better.
Yeah. Maybe we could, I don't know, cobble together an updated video too for them.
Yeah, we need to work on video. We got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to do some video stuff, let me know. We're going to need to get a better video on our website that talks about our team, slideshow, pictures.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I'll send some updates soon about timing and what we're going to do, but plan for tomorrow morning to at least come over to my place and at least get the robot configured and come up with a plan of where we want to transport the robot. And it's fine if we meet without me. We'll figure something out. We'll at least get some more time with the robot.
All right.
Do you have his address?
I think you might have to send your address again because I don't think we have it.
Yeah,
Most of
I'll post my address and my time shortly after this so we can all align. You said you want to go as early as 8 a.m.? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm ready to show up. I just have to,
Okay.
I'll be there.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll post time and detail and go from there.